You were on I'm
net
a Celebrity.
zero?
You should have been on Fantasy Island.
Get out of
These figures are nonsense, and you know they're nonsense.
I tell you what is nonsense, real nonsense. The Labour and Conservative net zero policies. And why are we not debating it?
You have made that point very clearly, and I'm going to make a new one.
That is going to change.
Prime Minister,
that is going to change, and that's going to be a good thing.
Stop talking. We are going to have questions and answers, not where you merely talk, if you wouldn't mind.
We have had to put up with being derided, hectored, bullied, called racist, and attacked during mainstream media interviews. Breaking right now, the British Bashing Corporation's most biased presenter, Nick Robinson, is lashing out at the independent media, probably knowing that his days and the days of the BBC dominating our media discourse are, thank God, coming to an end. Of course, where did he launch his attack? The Guardian, no less. His headline, Partisan and creepy interviews are a threat to democracy, Nick Robinson says. BBC presenter warns shared spaces for national debate at risk from platforms that fail to challenge leaders. They said fawning and partisan podcasts that give politicians hours of unchallenged airtime pose a danger to democracy, Nick Robinson has said, as he warned that Britain must guard against going down the same polarised route as the US media. He said the shared enemy, fellas, are the backers of partisan news, the backers of soft, creepy, chummy interviews on favoured networks or favoured platforms, the people who want to avoid scrutiny altogether and just broadcast a speech or an interview on YouTube or their social media channel. Britain could easily go down the route of the United States, in which people are shoved into partisan silos. It's a danger, not because it's a threat to the BBC, it's about democracy. Is there a shared space for a national debate? People might shout at the radio and television asking, why didn't you ask that? Or you should have been harder, or why are you so rude to my guy? But you see people who want control over your lives quizzed and questioned, challenged and tested, and held to account. That's what matters, not the format. Now, of course, this is a completely delusional argument from Nick Robinson, because for years and years and years, we have had to put up on the right, if we are a Brexiteer, for example, if we are someone who supports Tommy Robinson, we have had to put up with being derided, hectored, bullied, called racist, and attacked during mainstream media interviews. Most specifically on the British Bashing Corporation. And the problem is, this isn't an equal playing field, because let me tell you, Nick Robinson gives the kid glove treatments when he's speaking to Slippery Starmer or Wes Streeting or Angela Rayner or Rachel from Accounts. Yet I'm going to show you now how he treats prominent figures on the right. Then we'll get analysis from former Reform UK Deputy Leader Ben Habib, now chairman of the Great British PAC, and Father Calvin Robinson, host of Common Sense Crusade on the Lotus Eaters. So let me show you Nick Robinson being balanced
There are
with
people
Nigel
saying,
Farage.
I know what this is about. He wants to get politics again. I know you've run 7 times and lost 7 times, but
I'm really not going to have this. I'm sick to death of your condescending tone. It's about time.
I was teasing you, Mr. Farage. I was teasing
actually, you weren't. What you should say to people is you're the only person in British history who's won 2 national elections leading 2 different parties. Let's try that aside.
Are you coming back then, given your previous success?
If you're on benefits now and you go to work and work more than 16 hours a week, you're worse off.
I still don't know where the money's coming from.
Well, number one, we will get people off the unemployment register into work.
That's not going to raise you £140 billion a year, so I can tell you. You were on I'm a Celebrity. You should have been on Fantasy Island.
Get out of it.
These figures are nonsense, and you know they're nonsense.
I tell you what is nonsense, real nonsense. The Labour and Conservative net zero policies. And why are we not debating it?
You have made that point very clearly, and I'm going to make a new one.
That is going to change.
Prime Minister,
that is going to change, and that's going to be a good thing.
Stop talking. We are going to have questions and answers, not where you merely talk, if you wouldn't mind. When you put in the name Robert Jenrick, grooming, no mention. Grooming gang,
I wrote about
no
this,
mention.
Nick, I wrote about this last year.
No mention. Oldham,
I wrote
no
about
mention.
this, Nick, last year,
Rochdale,
and
no
was
mention.
criticised by the
Child
media
sexual
for doing
abuse,
so.
no mention, Mr. Jenrick. child rape, no mention. You have not raised, or have you, please correct me if my search is wrong, the issue of mass gang rape and child sex abuse that you're so energised about. You have no evidence you raised it as a minister and no evidence that you've raised it in the House of Commons.
Look, Nick, I wrote about this last year and was criticised by the media for doing so.
So, Father Calvin Robinson, I would put it to you that the only person who is partisan and creepy is Nick Robinson and his ilk. And he is absolutely terrified that the British bashing corporation, that the mainstream media are losing the control that they have had over the narrative for so long, and it cannot come soon enough.
They are. The BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Sky News, they're all on the same bandwagon. They all have the same approved narrative. They all took the same funding from the government over COVID. And so these people have an agenda. And anyone who speaks out against that agenda disrupts them. And so when we have the independent media actually questioning government ministers and holding the powers that be to account, it makes the mainstream media or the legacy media look weak, which is why they hate us. I don't know if Nick Robinson's ever been to America, but to say people will be shoved into partisan silos like they are in America, like, actually it's the exact opposite. One of the reasons I'm over here is because under the law of the land, the Second Amendment, we have free speech in this country. So people from the left and the right and anywhere in between can say whatever they like. In the United Kingdom, there are 30 arrests every single day for Facebook posts, Twitter comments, or X posts. Like, social media has become policed by the law of the land, and it's only one particular demographic. It's only people from the right or centre right of politics that get a knock on their door by 7 policemen saying, "Did you post this comment on Facebook that people might find offensive?" That is not a land of free speech. And so people are pushed, people are shoved into partisan silos. If they're conservative in Britain, unfortunately, you've had so many people on your show, I've had people on my show that have been arrested, that have had the knock on the door and told they'll never see their dog again. You know, they'll never have the same relationship with their loved ones again. They're going to be persecuted and prosecuted, and it's going to be the end of their life as they know it. For what? For a retweet. There are partisan silos exist in the United Kingdom, and it's because of people like Nick Robinson and their partisan views that anyone who has a different opinion, anyone who has a different voice should be silenced. To say, shut up, stop talking, Prime Minister. Stop
to Boris Johnson.
I mean, who they are?
Well, and also he'd never say it to Keir Starmer. But the thing is, Ben Habib, I think where he's fundamentally missed the point is that actually these interviews that he calls creepy and partisan are actually the interviews where you find out the most. So Joe Rogan's interview with Donald Trump before the last US election and his interview with J.D. Vance were absolutely seminal. Now, on a smaller scale, I would argue in our country, an interview that quite recently exposed Nigel Farage for moving to the centre on a lot of his positions was with Stephen Edgington of GB News, who does these brilliant long-form interviews on YouTube. So it's not what is the Ofcom regulated content that you actually see on GB News. It's something that he does online. And actually, he's far too good for GB News, but that's a whole other story. I'll put that to one side. But it was in that interview where he really pushed Nigel Farage on the issue of mass deportations and trapped Nigel Farage into admitting that he had absolutely no intention of dealing with mass deportations. He said that they were impossible. Likewise, Winston Marshall, on his long-form interview with Nigel Farage, that was where Farage admitted that Reform UK, or in his view, Reform UK needed the Muslim vote to be successful. Now, what's interesting to me is that that's the reason why Nigel Farage, and you will have noticed this, is not popping up in the independent media anymore. His advisors have admitted to me that is the strategy because they're too nervous. And that's the irony, isn't it? That actually it's much more dangerous for Nigel Farage to sit in a long-form interview in the independent media space than be hectored by the BBC or Sky News or Channel 4 News. But first, you know I never recommend anything unless I truly believe in it, and today I've got something which is game-changing for you when it comes to underwear. Have you ever stopped to think about how crucial comfort is down there? Well, let me tell you, today's Outspoken proudly sponsored by Sheath, the revolutionary brand shaking up men's comfort across the globe. This is what makes it even better, by the way. Sheath, and I love this, founded by a US Army veteran, Robert Patton, while he was serving in Iraq back in 2007. So that's right, this isn't just any underwear brand. It was designed for the toughest conditions imaginable. Patton was battling relentless heat and discomfort in full combat gear, and he thought there has to be a better way, so he created it. And let's be honest, traditional underwear just doesn't cut it anymore. Sheath's innovative dual pouch design ensures your comfort all day long, keeping things separate, cool, and fresh. So imagine your essentials being comfortably cradled away from unwanted friction and heat. Trust me, it's genuinely transformative. I've personally tested these at the gym, on long days at work, or just relaxing at home. And once you have experienced Sheath, there is simply no turning back. They're stylish, they're supportive, and they deliver unmatched comfort. It's like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your underwear. And right now, I am offering you an exclusive 20% discount at www.sheath.com. That's SHEATH. Although if you are watching, you can just click in the description box below. The link is there. But there is 20% off your entire order when you use my special promo code Outspoken at checkout. So what are you waiting for? Sheath is the perfect present for your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your brother, or hard to buy for best mates. There are also female versions available for ladies too, which you can see modeled here because Sheath is the official underwear of the UFC. So click on the link below or visit www.sheath.com and you can thank me later when you're feeling comfortable, confident, and ready to tackle anything your day throws your way. Remember to use Outspoken at checkout for 20% off. Sheath underwear, redefining comfort one pair at a time. But now, back to the show.
Couldn't agree more. All the clips you played there with Nick Robinson haranguing his guests didn't reveal anything. There was just him haranguing his guests and his guests trying to survive the experience. Whereas when I come on a show like this with you, Dan, or I go on with Winston Marshall or, any one of these great interviewers, I get comfortable and I speak my mind and I speak at length and you don't interrupt me so I can develop my theme. And people can then see what it is that Ben Habib really believes in and what my sort of political philosophy is. And through revealing that, people can then decide whether or not they wish to follow that brand of politics. If you just have a combative interviewee process, you reveal nothing. And everyone just retreats back completely uninformed. No, much better. And as you point out, people are more likely to discredit themselves if they're allowed to speak freely, because that's when they do it comfortably and they show themselves. And so if you, and this is, of course, one of the biggest arguments in favor of free speech, is if you allow people to speak freely, even people whose views you despise, you are more likely to make sure that they don't hold office, that they don't command government and so on. And so it's important that you have these independent channels if the independent channels are the only ones that will allow people to speak. And it's all about freedom of speech. So I commend you, Dan. And I think I said to you last night, when we were texting, I said, what a brilliant job you do, with these shows. And absolutely you do. I wasn't just blowing smoke up your proverbial backside. I mean it, because you
and I appreciate
stuff,
that. And I mean, I would argue that what I'm trying to do is give an independent daily news platform in the United Kingdom. But I also think the long form interview shows are really, really important. And I found it absolutely fascinating, Father Calvin, when the source very close to Nigel Farage told me, there's no way he would sit down with you, because they were so burned by what happened in that Stephen Edgington interview, because it has been so damaging for Nigel on the right.
This is the thing. So Stephen Edgington, Winston Marshall, yourself, people who are asking interviews, asking people on the right questions, even if they're on the right themselves, in the independent media, they want to get answers. They want to get truth. Whereas we don't see this from the left. They're propagandists. So if Nick Robinson has a politician on that he supports, such as a Labour politician, he will give them much less of a hard time than he would give Boris Johnson or Nigel Farage. This is one of the reasons people are turning to the independent media, because they know there's an integrity there you don't get in the legacy media. If I sit down with Reform, Reclaim, UKIP, Heritage, doesn't matter. I'm going to want to get to the truth of the matter, the crux of the matter, because I'm a British voter and I care about my country. Whereas lots of the so-called journalists in the mainstream media are actually activists from the left wing of politics, and they don't care about the truth. They don't care about the country. They care about winning because they care about power and influence. And this is one of the reasons that the BBC needs defunding, because all the people on there are peddling their own agenda, peddling the approved narrative, and it's all about the BBC's influence over the British people, which it's held for a long time. And thank God it's now losing that grip.
And it is worth pointing out, actually, I'm not going to take credit for this. It was World by Wolf, who does some brilliant work on X, who just compared and contrast the way that you answered, Ben Habib, the mass deportation question with Stephen Edgington compared to how Nigel Farage answered it. So let's look at Farage first.
Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants are in Britain at the moment. Do you support deporting all of those people?
It's impossible to do. Literally impossible to do. For us, at the moment, it's a political impossibility.
But is it your ambition?
No. So it's pointless even going there.
So it's a rhetorical problem.
It's a political impossibility. We simply can't do it.
From a demographic perspective, if you look at immigration levels, the white population in Britain is declining as a percentage and will likely become a minority within our lifetime, or maybe in my lifetime, I don't know.
Yeah.
For you,
it's already
is
a
that,
minority in London.
Right, and in Birmingham and other places, Leicester. Is that a problem for you? Is that something that you're concerned about?
The rate of demographic change is of massive concern to me.
Fascinating, isn't it? Because you can see, thanks to those long form interviews, we're able to compare and contrast directly very important differences in terms of how our politicians want to deal with these issues, Calvin.
It is. And again, it gets back down to the truth. What's the truth of the matter? Do the politicians we have want to make a difference to our country? Do they want to close the borders? Do they want to fight that fight that will be incredibly difficult against the mechanisms of the civil service and the other politicians in Parliament? Or do they want to sit on those nice green seats until they can sit on the red seats and get the luxury life?
I love that.
Yeah, and
a seamless transition from the green to the red.
Yes. But Ben Habib, one thing I've noticed, and I'm interested in your take on it, and it has, I guess, come at quite a personal cost to you in a way. One issue I think we have in the UK, and I do want to be very clear, I'm not attacking these individuals because I think a lot of these individuals are brilliant and I have them on Outspoken often. But I do think there's a real blurring of the lines at the moment between commentators who claim to be independent when really they are effectively Reform UK Party supporters. Now, some people would call them propagandists, some people would call them shills, but let's just say they are Reform UK supporters. So at times they feel like they have to defend the indefensible. And I think there's a real blurring of those boundaries because while I am absolutely someone who voted for Reform UK at the last election, I'm clearly on the right of politics. I'm very honest with my audience about how I'm feeling and about who I'm going to vote for and about this is why I voted for Boris Johnson and this is why I voted for Liz Truss and this is why I supported Nigel Farage. But I'm not trying to run for Reform UK, Ben Habib. I never want to work for Reform UK. I never want to be an MP. And this is what concerns me because I think we're seeing some people, especially when it came to the situation with you and with Rupert Lowe, where they are peddling a party position rather than giving independent analysis.
I couldn't agree more. People who had been quite polite and congenial with me for many years, whom I'd, campaigned with, etc., and had interviewed me on the media, had been incredibly friendly and supportive. And then as soon as I was critical of Reform UK or Farage, my God, what I got from them was really quite remarkable. And but so be it. You know, that's I will even go on the BBC though, Dan. I'll do whatever I need to. I'll take any format of interview in order to allow myself the best opportunity to reveal my political philosophy and what I believe this country needs, because you've just got to do that. Yes. So
I have no issue with that. And actually, by the way, I have no issue with someone like Darren Grimes, who is very open about the fact that yes, he's in the independent media space, but he's now a Reform UK councillor, right? He's not trying to hide that. I would question, and let me use a name because I'm going to be honest about it, I would question someone like Matt Goodwin, for example, who is presenting himself in a lot of ways on his Substack or on his GB News show as someone who is an independent journalist in a way, or an independent commentator, when my understanding is actually he is effectively really wanting to become part of the party, wanting to be an MP. And that's where I have an issue. I don't mind the people who are honest about it. If you're a Reform UK member and you believe in Reform UK and you're going to support Reform UK regardless, I'm absolutely fine with that. But I just think there's a slight blurring of the lines going on with some people.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go wherever you are.